There, that looks more like it. Yes, it's good to be here with you, Dali.
Yes, it's recording.
Yes, it's recording
Okay,
finally.
cool.
Dali and I have just had the loveliest conversation, and somehow the record button wasn't on. So this is
Uh,
Dolly Furnell from Cape Town, South Africa, and I do have a transcript of what she said. I just don't have a recording of what she said, but it was a lovely conversation. So we're gonna start in again. And Dolly,
mm,
you said you had an idea that you wanted to approach.
yeah. Okay, so I wrote down a couple of art quotes and I thought I only wrote down a few, but I collected a lot more. I kind of became OCD because it's so interesting what different people think that art is or painting is or creativity, and they'll make a quote about it, and obviously it's from a certain perspective or from an experience, or and I find that interesting. But so I'll maybe read a couple of these and you can stop me or interject at any point. And then I found two quotes that it resonates with something else with me. And if we get to that, then we do. Okay, so
Okay, so do you have these on paper or are they digital?
yeah,
Oh, they're on
they're
paper.
on paper.
Okay. Okay.
I can send you the digital
Well, I was
if
just
you
going
want.
to say if you had them on digital, we could put them on screen now, but just go ahead and read them.
Oh, okay. Um, okay, so this is one by Picasso. Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. Then somebody else said, painting is silent poetry. Someone named James Joyce said something profound about mistakes, and mistakes are the portals of discovery, which I
Oh, I
find really
love that.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that.
It takes a mistake and makes it like, oh, I'm intrigued by if there's a mistake, I want to go into it now, not like be disgusted by a mistake, which can sometimes be the case for me because and it's crazy. The mistake is often like a minor detail, and if you step back and look at the overall picture, you kind of are like, where's the mistake? I don't see the mistake. Or you can become fixated on that.
Uh-huh.
But with this quote, you can almost like zoom in and like go through the portal and like find the beauty in that mistake, and maybe it can you can draw it out and project it and integrate it into the piece that you're busy making. And then yeah, I just
Could
that's a random
you
idea
could
that
you
just
restate
came.
it again? He says a mistake is a portal.
Mistakes are the portals of discovery.
There's a
He was
lot of
referring to
different
art.
there's a lot of different ways that that idea has been. I like this one the best, but there are a lot of other ways. People say failure is the springboard to success, things like that that are much more
Mm,
like business type oriented. But this the way I like to think about the world is that everything scales. So this is something about art, but it also scales over here into our psychology of our personal
mm,
behavior and so forth. And there are I was having a talk recently with a therapist about how sometimes a memory, an unconscious memory, is driving an action. So the unconscious memory might be connected to some sort of fear or anxiety, and then that drives an action, and then you don't know why that action is happening. But if you can catch yourself, oh, this action, this mistake is happening. A lot of different things can happen. You can get down on yourself and say, oh, you're so stupid, you're a failure, or you can go to some sort of coping mechanism, a bad coping,
mm,
coping mechanisms like food or alcohol or drugs or whatever, um, or shopping. Some people do shopping. So there's a lot of choices to happen when that mistake happens, but I've been thinking a lot lately about quantum physics and how it kind of ties into this idea that when that happens, it's a mechanism to get you to stop and listen, to hear. You know, we talked, I don't know if you heard the episode we did the other day about hearing and obedience and how those are really the same word. So
I
when
found that really interesting.
when the mistake happens, then that's an opportunity to say, wait a minute, I'm going to hear, I'm going to try to process this in a new way and see that God is trying to bring some learning into my life. The reason it ties into quantum physics is that there is this picture. Chris Fields has been doing this series on quantum physics. It's just wonderful. And you don't have to know the background of this at all, but he has this circle that has thermodynamics as 1/3 of the circle, and learning as 1/3, and memory as 1/3. And he said the way that learning and memory work with each other in these thermodynamic situations is that when the memory becomes too large, that squeezes out the opportunity for learning. So you want the learning to take up the most space so that the memory is not the driver. And to me, that just said, wow, okay, that's exactly what's happening when this mistake happens, or when this memory comes up that's driving an action that's detrimental. That's an opportunity for learning to push back so that the memory becomes less important and the learning becomes more important, because all that learning is coming from God. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And like with this, you know, in terms of discovery, like to learn is also, or if I think of God, he often teaches by revealing something to us, or he reveals something to us and then he teaches on it, or then he guides you as to the way to navigate it. Um, and I think through that, you know, mini journey, you can discover the things that you are meant to in order to understand perhaps what you were doing wrong, or what you could do wiser, or how you could align it a little bit better so that you don't have to end up into, you know, a bad coping mechanism, or a bunch of feelings that you're kind of adding on to and hammering yourself on the head for. And God doesn't want you to be in pain. He wants to show you, he wants to lead you, he wants to guide you, he wants to fill you in. And
Yeah, in one way, I
yeah.
think he wants to rewrite that memory. You know, if we think of it
Wow,
in terms
that
of,
is,
yeah, I think he wants to rewrite that memory, because it's
oh,
the memory that's bringing us the pain, right? Um,
yeah.
and maybe we can learn. Well, I mean, we know that one of the things we can learn is that he was right there with us whenever that memory was implanted, and he's right there with us now, and
Mhm.
we're still here. We made it through, right? Yeah.
Wow, Karen, you're amazing.
Well, no,
That is like,
this is something I just got from
wow.
this therapist the other day. So, I
But
mean,
it
the thing
takes two
about
to tango.
connecting
I
it to
mean,
quantum physics is something that I got from Chris Fields, but this idea of um, how these old memories can have a continuing impact on your life. Um, yeah, I mean, there's this kind of therapy called RRT, which is rapid resolution therapy. Have you ever heard of it?
no, that's a
Um,
new one.
it's rather than talk therapy, which can take hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and weeks and
Mm.
months and years. Um, rapid resolution
Well,
therapy, they hope to help you in one session. And so what they
sounds intense.
it's not intense at all. It's very
Huh.
relaxing. They kind of help you come to a place where you recognize original memory was, or at least one of the original memories that's driving the fear or anxiety or whatever it is, that you found a way to cope with that memory at the time, and then that has become the way that you cope with that memory every time it comes up. But that memory is not by itself, it's connected to any other uncomfortable situation that might come up in your life, somehow gets married to that old memory. And so whenever you're uncomfortable, oh, let's go to that coping mechanism. And so if you can go back and rewrite that memory, then hopefully over time, any new kind of discomfort that comes along, you can just remember, oh, I made it through that. So this is not, whatever this is right now, I'm going to make it through this too. So I don't need to go and injure myself with something that's bad for me, because I am loved and I am whole and I made it to this point and he's with me and we're going to keep going forward. And, you know, it's that kind of a thing. And it's, yeah, it was very helpful.
Yeah. God is definitely in this situation, because you're giving me sort of beautiful images and insights, and like, I don't know, just I'm gonna go and like translate and meditate on a couple of things a little bit later, and link it to scripture and things like that. Anyway, um, there was, I think I'll skip a couple of these. In my opinion, art is communication, or at least that is something that's very, that I feel very strongly about now in my life, because, you know, for me, I think it's my strongest form of communication, especially if put into a dialogue and then sort of deciphered. And then I can also discover what was I trying to say that I could not find words for. And then I'm like, oh, yes, that's exactly what it is, 100%. But I didn't know before, but I knew. There was, sure, I wrote down a lot here. So I read the book Art and Fear by David Bayles, and I read parts of it aloud as well. That actually, it helped, and like reading it aloud kind of made me pause, because it's like you're reading it and I'm on the screen, but I'm also looking through the camera that's on me. I'm trying to look through that, but I'm also trying to take into consideration that I'm speaking to other people, but I'm also trying to be mindful of what I'm reading and try and like understand and not be too like robotic about it. And there were a couple of things that I was like, wait, what? But anyway, so I pulled some quotes. There's one that there's two that I wrote down, but okay, there's one that it goes, the seed of your next artwork lies embedded in the imperfections of your current piece. Such imperfections are your guides, valuable, objective, non-judgmental guides to matters you need to reconsider or develop further.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the quotes that stuck out to me so strongly the first time I read this book. I took this class 8 times on creativity, basically. And we were introduced to that book the very first time. So I ended up having to read the book 8 times because that was part of the class. And when I hit that quote the very first time, it grew in meaning to me every time I read it. And I think that the time when it really came home to me, I think I resisted. There's a certain amount of work involved in following through on that quote.
Yeah.
And I resisted that for a long time. So it was probably 3-4 years after I read it for the first time, which I actually did what it said, which basically what it's saying is take all of your work and look at it and try to figure out what are the imperfections in this work. I always knew there were a lot of imperfections in my work, but I didn't want to look at them because it's too hard to think about the things that you're not doing that you could be doing. So I took out all my work at one point and I laid it all around the floor in the living room, and I'm looking at it, and I had to think, what do I notice about all these pieces? And what I noticed about all this early work was that there was no buttress from the bottom of the piece.
Okay.
That if I had a figure, the figure is just rising up out of the bottom of the piece, but that the bottom might just be, the whatever was in the foreground, and then the figure rising up out of the foreground. But there was something about the composition did not bring it, didn't. I had to learn that the composition has to take into consideration the entire substructure. So there has to be a movement that goes through the painting, and there has to be a way to, if your eye goes out of the frame, there has to be a way to get back in. And it felt like everything was falling out the bottom of my pictures. So a viewer could be looking at the picture, and then they would, if they looked down, then they'd be out of the frame and they'd go on someplace else. And so I decided I'm going to learn how to do composition well, so that people don't get lost out the bottom. I know it sounds like a silly thing, but it really changed the way that I did composition entirely. I mean, I don't know if you see this picture behind me of the 3 women.
Yeah, I see that.
You see all the movement that's taking place at the bottom. That's in there so that it keeps bringing you back up into where the focal point is.
Yeah, to be honest, your head is very close to it. So
sorry.
like looking. No. I'm sometimes looking at that whilst I'm looking at you, and it's been attracting my attention. But with the notion, when he said the seed of your next artwork lies embedded in the imperfections of your current piece, it reminds me, maybe it's just because I'm fascinated by the mustard seed parable and the parable of the sower, and but anyway, so it reminded me of Matthew 17 verse 20. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you. Or like, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to that mountain, move, and it will move. And nothing. And I find that to be very profound, and I'm still coming back to it and returning to it with other little pieces to try and gain more understanding. It's fascinating to me, and I will just talk and talk and talk about it, so I'm nipping it in the bud. But another thing about the seed is the notion of that it is like the kingdom of God, and that you can look at in Luke 13 verse 19, and you can carry on from that, or Mark 4 verse 32. And what's interesting that is said about there is that when it is planted, it grew and became a tree, and the birds perched in its branches. Then I think the tree of life, and then I think of all connectedness, and I think of the birds. And if it's birds, and let's say it's all the birds of, like, since Noah's Ark, like, that can fit into this into the branches of the mustard tree that is grown from one seed. It's I mean, that is like, if you think of one little seed, it can grow into a stem, like, basically, and that can yield a couple of pods that can easily yield like 100 mustard seeds. Now think of a bush that came from one seed and that yields like thousands of seeds. And that's just a bush that's half my body in height. And I've experienced this. And so essentially, that's like two different seeds that were planted and gave back more than 30, 60, or 100 fold. It gave back revelation. It gave back more understanding. It gave back enough so that I could give to others to also plant those seeds and meditate on that scripture and see with their hands and be guided by God and nature and understand the dynamics of light and growth and they can grow in grace with the experience of planting a little seed. And mustard seeds, they pop up quite quickly and easily, so it will be a success. I believe it when I give a little seed kit to somebody else. I hope to hear a testimony. Anyway, just yeah, and lately through like different themes and things like that. And I guess I'm at a point where I'm like, I really want to know more keys to the kingdom and what, how it works and the principles, almost like art. What are the principles? And what is the composition going to look like? What elements are they like? And I'm so curious about that. And then I think, well, we are also part of creation and we create. I think that we're supposed to do that. And God is our creator, and we've got which part of the brain I can't remember. In I don't know which part of the brain is the one that needs to be activated via creativity to help things sort of grow and develop, but it's an essential part of life. And yeah, it's like, I mean, it is all creation, and like I feel like I'm going deep into the back parts of my mind. So I just those are little tidbits, and
Well, I
there
love that
was
about the mustard seed. When you were talking about that, I was thinking, wow, yeah, every mustard plant that's ever grown on Earth was in that initial seed, right?
it's yeah it's something that it's like quite once you understand it. And I like the practical approach when you grow, and like yeah, trial and error, but get yourself some mustard seeds. And I think that you do garden. um Now have a mustard seed experience. um just treat yourself.
Well,
um
it grows wild around
yeah.
California. So in the spring, the fields are covered with mustard seed. Beautiful.
So you can harvest it, but and then plant it, because it's a different thing to have it in your hand and to intentionally plant it gently into the soil, cover it a bit, have it in light, water it a bit, and let love grow basically, because it will pop up and show, and you nurture it. And I've got a different concept of what is that, nature nurture. I literally have always understood it as you go into nature, you nurture it, and the nature nurtures you in return. Because that's the amazing thing about nature. It just loves you without you having done anything. You didn't do anything, and it just loves you. It doesn't seek to harm you. It's just there, and it's beautiful as well. And when you're immersing yourself in nature, you can almost become sort of the more real version of yourself. And there's definitely a connectedness. And for me, if I'm feeling, because sometimes you can feel a little bit distant from God, and yeah, it's like sometimes if you feel distant from God, go to the garden. but yeah, or nature, and I'll just sort of be in like, wow. And I don't want to say oh, I like to say wow. Um, and I'll feel the earth beneath my feet, and I'll like put my hand onto a branch of a tree, and I'll think like, look at this stability. This is older than I am, and there's a park nearby, but it's more than just a park. It's a valley, it's a hill, it's got a river running through it. Actually, you just can't see it. It's you can see the mountaintops and a bit of a forest on the other side. It's got different slopes, if I could call it that. And it's just an amazing place to explore, and it is constantly changing, constantly. I've even planted some seeds in certain places there, but it's huge. And I go there and I just forget about myself, self. You know, sometimes it can be like very me, myself, and I. And like, I mean, I will admit sometimes, you know, I will be a little bit startled at like, oh, I squished God completely out. I didn't give him any space. And, you know, with that, I'm almost harnessing burdens with me. And like, if I go into nature, that almost automatically falls off, as if that is a part of my nature, that's not supposed to tug on me and be a part of me. And then, you know, it's like you're breathing in oxygen, and you're in this created space, and God is everywhere, and you can feel the love, and you can have love for it. Because if you're looking at something and you find it beautiful, is that not, you know, a part of you kind of totally being in love? And you know, you can get like something from it. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's just a meeting place for me and God, but not just me, lots of other people, especially people that don't know him. You know, they feel something. And it's really important to get out there and to go, and even if you get a little plant, you know, and you interact with it and you care for it, there's something about that that is just out of this world, but in this world and of this world, and it's love, and it shows you, and it's amazing. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. I'm so sorry. Um, but
Well, it's very fun to listen to you get carried away. I have to say that.
I wrote down, yeah, so much more, but
Well, let's just keep going. You have another quote that you like?
okay. Um, oh, okay. Uh, there's generally no good reason why others should care about most of any one artist's work. The function of the overwhelming majority of your artwork is simply to teach you how to make the small fraction of your artwork that soars. And when it says soars, that reminds me of Isaiah 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not be faint. And I feel like that's just very strong together. And I know it's just on, you know, like to make the small fraction of your artwork that soars. And I immediately thought soars, and of that scripture, and like the eagle's wings. And yeah, it's just, there's something about that. Like I only made that connection like just now, and I quickly wrote it down. But I found that to be um, deep. And if it's a small fraction of your artwork that sort of takes flight or soars and becomes, let's say, magnificent, even to you, and like almost by itself, and like and you keep on in that process, and you keep noticing the different art that is out there already existing. And I'm not just talking about it being on a canvas. Art is in nature, art is in everything. Art is like art in terms of, like, I think the way that you look at things and the way that you are sort of allowing yourself to experience it. And I think also, yeah, I suppose there's obviously a frame or something, a lens that you look through in order to see things that way. Um, because I know everyone sees differently, and I don't always see like that all the time. But you know, like sometimes you can look up at the clouds and see, you know, an angel, like or a butterfly that's sideways or upside down or something like that, and then you can watch the clouds slowly move and morph into something else, and it changes shape. I don't know, it's like patterns. It's like the world out there is happening, it's moving. I think movement is key, like for things to be created as well, and to
Well,
be
one of the
connected.
one of the things that struck me about that quote too is there is only a small fraction that soars. Because I think that my experience is like most other artists. Every time you paint a painting, you kind of hope that it will soar, and that's your goal. You have the picture in mind. Oh, this is going to be the initial picture is so beautiful. If you can just accomplish that, you know, it's going to be so great. And then you're done and you look at it and like, no, I didn't get there. I just didn't get there. And so, but that's also part of what drives you to the next painting, because
Yeah,
if you could get perfection in a painting, then why bother to try again? In fact, the ones that really turn out to soar end up kind of being a hindrance, because then you think, oh, but what if I can't do that again? And then it kind of makes you fearful to even try. But one of the things that our teacher pushed on us a lot is that this small fraction only turns up because of brush mileage. So you just have to keep
that's
getting
interesting
more
how
and
you
more
say
and more
it
brush
like that.
mileage. And the more brush mileage you get, the more there will be this small fraction that soars. But you can't ever let whether it soars or not soars affect whether or not you keep producing more brush mileage.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that, like, you're saying brush mileage, and that also indicates sort of like a long, you know, like that's a range of movement in a way, you know, if you put it all together, like mileage. And like if you think of brush strokes, and let's say it painted a whole path through time, and you could probably do an experiment out there. If you found a huge piece of tar, you can, you know, test how many brushstrokes you've done and see how far it paints. Um, but you know, as a bird soars, you know, that also it takes space, it moves, it travels a certain distance, and it develops through that. And there's a motion, and then it sounds like there's also a momentum that you get to build. And then when you do finally achieve that flight moment, like something about what you said also made me think of it, like if you can lose yourself into a piece, in a way of like embracing a sense of freedom, but then, you know, with a touch of joy, and yet also being able to ground yourself at the same time, and be maybe a bit more stoic or something, and have, it's like a dance with the canvas and with your tools, and you're doing a duet. And if you collaborate with the piece that you're creating, and that is sort of shaping, or you know, with you, and you sort of, you end up with something in between you, and you come away with an experience or perspective or a certain feeling, and you can also and the painting or whatever it's created comes away with it being fully created, or at least it being the seed of the next creation. So there's just something in it, and it's a great way of connecting. And I think, with art, there's something in it for everybody. Um, and art interpretation as well. I'd love to do that more often. Like, sometimes, if I'm walking with a friend, I'll be like, oh, look at that. What do you think of that? Do you see sometimes I'll see faces or other shapes, in, in a stump of wood or random things. Or I'll just literally point out like something pretty and stop and look, like almost stop and smell the roses. You got to take those opportunities in your life while you have them, stop passing them by. So it's like that's some sage advice there. And
Well, I also
with
like what you were
those
saying
moments.
about the dance, because what that really
Mm,
points out is that the artist has a relationship with the
yeah,
art. And I don't remember where it is.
there's
I think
synergy.
it's in Ephesians where it says that you are God's workmanship. And that workmanship is the word poema, which is sort of like you are God's poem. So
Oh
you are
wow.
you are God's artwork, right?
Yeah.
And so he has a relationship with you because he is working into your life all this
Mm,
beauty through this relationship. But then you also have a relationship with other people in the same way that the artwork, you produce an artwork, and then that artwork goes out into the world and has a relationship with the people who are viewing that artwork.
mm,
And I think it's so important for every person to experience this creative impulse. So even for people who can't paint or don't want to paint, maybe they want to build something, or maybe they want to cook in a creative way, or maybe they want to um, anything that you do where you're producing something through the skills that you develop in order to create something new that you can put out into the world that communicates something of you that you can't communicate with words. you know um
can you hear that?
no, I can't hear that. No, all I
You
can.
can't hear the high
No,
pitched beeping.
no.
Okay, that's good.
No.
Good.
So anything that you do that's creating something new that goes out into the world that communicates something of you is allowing
Yeah.
other people to communicate with that part of you, and is building this whole relationship amongst all the people in the same way that God is having a relationship with you, and then you're having a relationship with other people. And I think that's, we've lost so much in this idea that somehow we call like famous musicians, we call them artists. So you're only an artist if you rise to the top and get famous, or you only become an artist if your paintings are selling from the gallery or whatever. But really, every person is intended to be an artist in some field,
Yeah,
because otherwise, everything that God has built into each one of us doesn't get communicated to everybody else. And art
that's
is that
absolutely
medium.
stunning.
Yeah.
There's a quote that, like, I don't know, a lot of people see it. I've seen it multiple times just come up. Every child is an artist. And, then I think of, um, what does John Vervaeke always say? As the child is to the sage must be to the child, or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, I think that like in each adult, you can still evoke the child in you that is born to be that artist, and each child is an artist. And like Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted with the beeping. I can hear it, you can't.
No,
So I'm just gonna try and just go distant. But
it's not
yeah,
a
it's
warning, is it? Is it some kind of warning that you're supposed
no,
to leave the building?
yeah, I need to load up more electricity. So it's telling
Oh,
me it's low right now. So yeah, it's being persistent. Um,
uh,
anyway, but yeah, like even a lot of people, you've probably heard a lot of people saying, no, but I can't draw. Or I've certainly heard that. Or like they say off the bat, like they can't do something. But for example, they say I can't draw. Now, when I was in school, I had a design teacher that just totally obliterated that statement. He had such an amazing heart and personality. He was an artist. Wow. Um, wow. He was like colorful. He had depth. He had like he was changing all the time. It was like amazing. He was wise as well. Some art is wise, don't you think?
mm,
Um, anyway, so like bless his soul, he passed away, but just a legendary teacher. And he said, anyone who can think can draw. So, and the way that he said it, we were all like, and then we, were embracing sort of certain drawing exercises. Like, you look at the person opposite you and you try and take them in, and you look at them and you draw with the pencil, and you try not to look at your page,
mm,
and then you can do that and you close your eyes and you draw um, that same person with your eyes closed, and you're not looking at them or the page, just from what you got. And some interesting things would come out of that. And then we'd crumple up a piece of paper and put it in front of us, and he would say, now draw the lines on it. And then from there he sort of taught us, okay, now look at the pieces, is that piece darker there? And he taught us about shading. And this was just in one lesson. But if I take it even more simple, if you've got a piece of paper and a pencil and you draw a dot, you just let gravity help you and make a dot, and then move and make another dot, and you drag the pen along. I mean, this doesn't take much thought. It can just take guidance, but you drag the like pencil, connecting the dots together. Like they there, you've drawn, you've begun something. And like I had this one experience of that by teaching a child. He was hesitant to do this project because they saw sort of the end piece or the goal of what they were supposed to try and make. It was these African masks, and like I could see he was like a tortured, artist, or he he was not knowing what to do. Yet he was so like keen to do this project. He was excited, and he was in profound, deep thought, and he was so young. And I went up to him and I tried to gauge what the problem was, and he couldn't articulate it. But I saw that he kept hesitating with the pencil on the page, and yeah, and I guided him through it, and it was like, you know, the minute I got him to touch the pencil to the page, and I guided him to ask him to move it, just drag it along, just move it. And slowly but surely, like he was able to move it, and I just directed him, okay, and just basically confirmed what he was busy doing as he was busy doing it, and they're helping him to realize, oh, he's drawing, oh, he's doing it, he's begun. And I would show him, see the line that you're doing, and you're correct. And if you keep on going this way, what's going to happen? And um, I don't know, like I can't remember everything that I did and everything that he did, but I think that that personal touch and that personal touch and that initial connection and the willingness to just sort of take a moment and be gentle. And because beginning things is difficult, and sometimes we've got like this, we've got amazing imaginations that sometimes it's a bit scary, like you can scare yourself. Or you think of the expectations that may be on you, and that may be linked to something that's triggering a memory, like embedded in your past or at home, and that's making you freeze in the moment. Um, but it's amazing, like when he began to flow, he ended up drawing 2 different masks, and he completed them both. When they only needed to draw one, and he was the one that like was just getting up. He just he couldn't stop. Um, and yeah, it's just that action of doing. It's something about doing. Like the more you anticipate, and the more you can stand like right close to something and not do anything and just keep on thinking and um growing the fear or growing whatever is making you fear bigger and bigger in your mind. And you've got to do, in any case, you've got to end up doing to break that fear. And it's amazing, like what you can realize through that. You kind of realize a vision of the truth. The truth being that that fear was way out of proportion, and there's something that, yeah, you get empowered. You've conquered something. At least you've conquered, being able to like smash an illusion out the park, or a delusion. At least that portion of fear that was just way too inflated. Um, and
And
therefore,
sometimes it's not even that fear is a very real thing for a lot of people, but sometimes it's just a simple thing of I can't do that, because they tried it once and they weren't very good at it, and so therefore I can't do it. And so for a little while I was teaching elementary art when my daughter was in elementary school, and so I was teaching her class, and the kids would say, "Oh, I can't draw," and then I would say, "Well, maybe you can't draw now, but you will be able to draw." "Oh, no, I'll never be able to draw. I can't draw. I tried it once. I'm no good at it." And I said, "Well, you write your name, don't you?" "Yes." "How long have you been writing your name?" "Oh, like by this, they're third grade. So they've been writing their name for 3 years." "Okay. The first time you wrote your name, what did it look like?" "Oh, it was terrible." "But you write your name every day, don't you?" "Yes, yes." So, so over time, when you do things more and more over time, you eventually get better and better and better. But the first time is never going to be great. But we live in a culture where there's this expectation that the first time you do something, if you're not great, then it's going to be embarrassing to show your work to other people.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Even there's like I feel often like a lot of pressure. And I think that there's good pressure in life, and then there's like pressure that may be coming from your own self, and that's complicated. But God can help you sort that out. So can a good therapist in combination. But then there's actual pressure that people put on you. And if you're doing a lot of things in life, sometimes you're just trying to be kind to everybody, and you're trying to handle everything else, and you don't want to complain, and you don't want to say like this, and you're trying to put down like nice boundaries, and you're trying not to let that part of you that wants to bite like come out. um and to some people you smile with the love of the Lord for as long as you can, and then you gracefully just go and and yeah, like I just show that like I don't know if you felt like it's always like it's in the air, or um there's like extra pressure, but I feel like a part of that is from other people also experiencing an extra pressure, which could be like a part of the change that's busy going on, like the acceleration of many things. It's like I would hope and pray that the kingdom is coming. But there's definitely something happening with the universe, with us all. It's large. There's and nobody can quite like you know figure out what it is, and that's great. I think that's a great thing because uh, at least if there's an unknown or whatever I don't know, or to the end of my knowledge into like I don't know anything, is God. And so like I think that generally things are going to turn out for the better. And that and I also like with that I think that I'm hoping that the pressure that I feel is helping me to build endurance to be able to endure and then like enjoy um like in whatever season is to come. But yeah, then I feel like it would be worth it. Not that you can say no to pressure and things like that, especially when it feels like it's coming from above. I don't know if you've ever felt that. Like,
Yes, yes, yes.
not that it's dragging you down, it's more like, no, now you need to step it up type of pressure. That makes
Yes,
sense.
because now is this moment to do something. I've just been reading Perelandra, which is the second book of the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I had read the third volume many times, but I had not read the first two. And so I had agreed to do a conversation about the trilogy with somebody. And and I just finished Perelandra, which is the second one. And there's this perfect illustration of that in chapter 11 of Perelandra, where the main character is feeling this pressure from God to do something. And when that pressure comes on, the mind jumps to all sorts of things. First thing we come to is, oh, this can't be real, because why would God be talking to me? I'm not important.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that we think that is because we don't want to listen to it, right? And so then maybe the next thought that comes along, well, he can't really mean that, because that would just be too hard. So he can't possibly mean that, because after all, I'm just weak and I can't possibly do that. And the mind goes through all these excuses for why we can't listen, or if I did that, I would be way too important. So God can't really mean for me to do that, because he doesn't want me to, step outside my lane. And you can come up with all kinds of things when that pressure comes on. But ultimately, I think it's Jordan Peterson says, either everything matters or nothing matters. And if everything matters, then every choice we make has cosmic consequences. And that's the kind of pressure that, if you let yourself take that pressure on, humanly speaking, can turn you into a dictator, a monster, right?
Yeah,
Everything I do has cosmic consequences. Or if you recognize the truth of that, meaning that God has a purpose and a place for me, and every decision that I make is part of that purpose and place, and I have to submit every one of those decisions to him and receive his power to accomplish that thing, so that I don't turn into a monster, right? Then
like living led by the spirit and not by the flesh.
yes.
I feel like the flesh, it's like that's where temptation is. That's where you can like turn into that monster. But if you are like being guided by God, and if you're living according to the spirit, then, that's the way to go. Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's exactly the whole point, that pressure, there's a purpose to that pressure. I tend to think that even if the pressure is coming not from God, but from outside circumstances, there's a purpose in that pressure, because we can learn something from all of those things. The seed of your next work lies in the imperfections of your current work, right? So the imperfection
Wow.
of your current work, the seed of the next thing that you're going to do. If you think about that one quote, it's just pretty much everything. If I were a weightlifter and I'm weightlifting and I can't quite get up to bench press, I don't know what would be good for a bench press, but let's say 180 pounds or something. Maybe that's small, I don't know. But let's say if I just failed at my 180-pound limit, and I walk away and I give up and I say, okay, I'm never going to make 180 pounds. That's the imperfection of my current work. But the seed of my next work is in there, because in order to achieve that, there's a lot of things I would need to learn. I need to maybe strengthen my arms. I need to strengthen my heart. I need to build endurance. I need to strengthen my courage. I need to get my mind in the right place. So there's this whole raft of skills that I have to develop to break through that next level. And that's the seed of my next work lying in the imperfections of my current work. And that's true for everything. So every pressure that comes on us is to teach us what we need to learn in order to get to the next step. And if we don't get those pressures, we never learn any of these things.
Like seeds of knowledge that, like, when you receive it, then you plant it, and then it starts to reveal to you what is next to do. And and then also, like, when you use the weightlifter example,
Because I'm not one of
I almost saw the different I thought of something else. I thought, okay, well, he's walking away. Oh, he didn't lift 180 pounds. But what another seed possibly that he could take is that, okay, I didn't achieve that, but say, like, okay, the seed that could be taken away is that perhaps I should be more realistic about my goal. So perhaps 150 or something like that. It's kind of a weird way of thinking, but that's what occurred to my brain. And I thought, like, it's not to, it's to just, set the weight to something that you can handle. That's, and then you work from there. But inside that now, I feel like that's got something deeper in it for me. So I'll wait for that to come later. But
well, let me put it in terms, put it in terms of artwork. One of my first realizations of this came when I painted a picture of what I thought expressed the beauty of how God works in our lives. And the picture in my mind was just beautiful. I had a photograph of hands on the piano. And the picture that I had in my mind when I'm looking at those hands on the piano is kind of like, they look like mountains, so you can kind of imagine they look like mountains. And then my daughter's piano teacher had said to her, it's the placement of your finger on the key and the amount of pressure that you exert that changes the tone and brings the beauty.
Giving me goosebumps.
So I wanted to represent that in this painting with the finger on the key and the hand. So I turned the hands into mountains, and I had the keyboard, and the keyboard was like the place where the water falls over and then comes splashing back up. And then I had a sunset behind. That's the picture in my mind. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so beautiful. Well, because I didn't have the skill to produce the picture that was in my mind, I came up with a painting, but it wasn't the one that I had wanted to have. And I had to show it to the class. And as I stood up in front of the class, we're not allowed in that class to complain or to say, I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. We weren't allowed to say any of those things. We just have to present the work. And so I'm standing up there and the tears are streaming down my face because I'm so ashamed of I couldn't produce something that in my mind was beautiful. But I'm looking out at the group and they're all crying.
Oh my, wow.
And
That is incredible.
so I realized at that moment I couldn't achieve the skill level that I wanted to achieve, but it does communicate. Okay.
Yeah.
At least it communicates. So what I learned from that is that in order to achieve that painting that's in my mind, I have a lot of skills I need to develop. I need to develop better how to make water look realistic, and I need to learn better how to make the paint flow to create a beautiful sunset. And I needed to develop a lot of skills. So that drove me to start learning more and taking more classes and developing more skills. But by the time I got those new skills, I had a new picture in my mind that was a bigger picture that was harder to produce. And that's so one of the things that I don't know if it's from art and fear or if it's just the way that I kind of coalesced it all in my mind. But the thing that I always say is that your vision always outruns your skill. It always will outrun your skill. And there's a
I
reason
like
for
that.
that. There's a reason for that because the fact that it outruns your skill means that you need to continually be building skills. And that's why we grow. Without it, we wouldn't grow.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So with with the piece with the mountains and the, yeah, it's just that, do you ever like practice just like with in a sketchbook continuously over and over, like certain forms, like sketching hand this way, certain sketching it this way, just almost like a scribble sketch, but you're just sort of like trying to uh, piece together an idea, and
Well, for
you know.
this class, that's exactly what we had to do is keep a journal. Every idea that you have,
Okay.
you put it in the journal and you work on it. And yeah,
But I mean
absolutely.
repetitively, like
Yes,
the hands, different ways,
yes.
over and over and over again until, yeah, it's like, and then
Well,
like
so for
now I'm
that
thinking, like,
series,
imagine
I
you
used
did
those
that.
hands on the keys for 20 paintings ultimately, but they all said something different.
That's amazing. It's a bit
Yeah.
like an artist, like an art melody communicating a melody within it, or music being created. And because if you, let's say you displayed all of them and the keys were and the hands were continuously moving, then it's like you painting God, literally making music, like, wow, that's incredible.
Oh yeah,
Like,
some of those
wow.
paintings were so much fun. I mean, in one of them, the hands almost became like because I used to watch my daughter play the piano and when she was little, she was so good and so fast, and it was like little birds dancing across the keys. And so I
um,
painted the hands so that you could see the birds' wings flying in the hands as they're moving across the keys. And another time I had this kind of image of how the worship is rising up out of the keys into this cathedral. And so then the painting had this music rising up into the cathedral from the keys while playing with the hands. And then another time I altered the viewpoint. So you're looking at the hands from the viewpoint of the piano. And so you're
wow.
seeing the hands from this side, right? Um and that was a much more fun one, like that, like there's this dance going on, like the piano can see the hands creating this dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean it was a lot of fun to do
Did
that.
you do a view from above as well?
Yes, yes. That one that was the first one I did, was the view from above. And I didn't feel that that was as successful because I had a lot to learn. Plus, you don't, I mean, part of, for me, one of the things I learned in this creativity class is that the profile of your shapes, if the profile of your shapes is interesting, it captures the viewer much more than if everything is just smooth. So when you're looking down from above, you see the round head, you see the long arms, right? And you see
Yeah.
the tops of the keys. But if you're looking at it from the side, there's a lot more interest in the shape.
Yeah. But I suppose the way that you articulated it, and the reason why I asked that is because I suppose in my mind, I've got a certain image like that could be a view from above. But I can't, I can't possibly articulate it. That's why I asked. But yeah, it could even be like as if you are seated at the piano yourself, and the view from above is from your view onto your hand,
Mhm.
playing the piece
Yes, I had one piece like
on the
that, and
piano.
that one I painted when I was in a place of some personal pain over something that had happened in my life recently. And so it was very, very emotional painting. And surprisingly enough, somebody bought that one. I was really surprised that anybody would buy that painting because there was so much, you know, there was a
Wow.
lot of power in that piece. I don't know if I even still have a photograph of it. Yeah, but
So
I didn't do a very good job of keeping track of all the paintings that I sold. So I have a lot of stuff out there that,
I think that that's normal. I mean, if we were, I know for a fact that I have not been able to keep track of every little thing, that I wanted to document or that I didn't even want to document. Or it's there's so much in life, like so much
yeah, and
accumulation.
you're 28, is that right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like it's 280 sometimes.
Well, you
uh,
did say you're an old soul, so
but yeah, just because um I feel just like aged. I feel very aged. Like um I don't know. It feels like everything is taking very long. Um, but yet, patience is key. Always practice patience. Like that is like solid advice anybody can give to anybody. You can never not practice enough patience. But lately I've been, that's fine. But I've been noticing, oh, stubbornness. I need to, like take that as a piece of clay and work it into something better because that's kind of getting in the way of certain things. Because, I think that there's patience and then there's stubbornness. And I think I somehow can be stubborn where I think I'm being patient. And I think that there's more of a depth to that. But
that's a really
yeah, when
interesting crossover. I hadn't ever put those two together because I mean, my first thought, I'm always trying to be a Barnabas, always trying to be an encourager. So my first thought was to pop in and say, "Oh, but what's the other side of stubbornness?" You know, every coin has the other side. So the other side of stubbornness would be the flip side, the good side would be persevering, right?
oh yeah.
Right? So, but it didn't occur to me. So how do you put patience and stubbornness together?
Well, like if um, so trying to think how can I um, so they would be like, let's say it's two coins and like they are like next to one another, so it's not like if there's any flip sides, although if I think of it now, if you were to put 2 coins, and like resiliency or is underneath uh, stubbornness, then I wonder what is underneath patience. Because, but anyway, but patience and stubbornness sort of, you say crossover, maybe there's a clash because like maybe it needs to integrate, but I feel like the stubbornness, if I have to think of it just like that, is like a knot. Like that must be like, that's why I think of clay. And the other day, I got given a piece of clay, and like I was like, yeah, make a pinch pot. So I did that, and it was very therapeutic. And it was with an art lesson with a different class of kids, and I was just like getting lost in it. It was so nice to make and shape something with my hands. um, I mean, I need to constantly do something with my hands, like, but that was so therapeutic. And the fact that I could mold it and shape it and be gentle with it, um, where I think because of some flight of some kind, I think that contrast could easily be a smashing or like something breaking on the floor, like, and that might not make sense at all. And I know I've gone very far from the flip sides of the coin, but I think there's a lot of emotion that comes with this, like patience and stubbornness. It's like, um, be patient, but don't be so patient that you're just stubborn and then you're stuck. Or there's less flexibility if you're like too stubborn, or it's more difficult to move when you're stuck in your stubbornness. And like, and to deal with it does take patience, because yeah. And then I want to somehow identify a third emotion or third, um, in that sort of trio, because yeah, and that's something that I'm struggling with, because it's
Well,
like
so let
somebody else pointed it out to me, and I
uh-huh.
was like, what?
Well, let's take your stubbornness. You said it was like a knot,
Hmm.
right? Do
Yeah.
you knit? Do you crochet?
I don't knit, but I sew. I'm busy sewing little felt hearts. Uh, I could um I
Oh,
sew
they're
them by
adorable.
hand, and then
Uh-huh.
I stuff them. I've got about, I think, I hope I've got almost 200 now. I need to make 250 of them, for 250 cancer patients. They each gonna get a pocket hug, and like you put it in your pocket. And I've tested this out on myself. And you'll randomly find it, and then you find this heart, and like it just provides a feeling of comfort, and you can like just hold it and squish it, and know that you're loved, or know that like somebody thought of you, or that you're cared for. And it's a heart, so however young the patient is, it's like this squishy heart thing, that they can hold on to. And
That's so
yeah, when I
beautiful.
tried it out, it was incredible, because I found it at the time I needed it the most, and I was so grateful. And I was like, it works. So that made me pursue sewing like these hearts until I get to 250.
That that
Um, but
that's amazing. Wow.
yeah, I would love to know how to, or I'd love to learn at some point how to crochet and knit, because I admire a lot of those creations.
Well, my
Um,
daughter, my youngest daughter, who's 28, exactly your age,
oh, really?
she's
Okay,
been
cool.
crocheting and knitting for many years, and she's very, very gifted, very knowledgeable. But when she first started knitting, the way that skeins of yarns are made in the old days, I think they were better, but modern skeins of yarn, when you go to pull the thread out from the middle to start knitting with, a lot of times it'll be when you start pulling it out from the center of the skein, out will come this great big knot of just all kinds of yarn, like this, all knotted up, and you can't get the thing undone. And she would just like, and she'd hand it to me. So
Oh,
my job is
thanks.
to get the knots out. And that is a tremendous, so here's this knot of stubbornness, right? But it really trains you in patience to try to undo a knot, because these tangles, if you pull on them because you get impatient, it just makes the tangle tighter, right?
And
So
more
you have
painful.
to
Yeah,
very gently work with a tangle to get it undone. And you have to really
that's what it is.
focus and look and understand what's causing the tangle, right?
The
Yeah. So,
gentleness. That's
yeah.
what it is. That is what it is. Yo, thank you. That is what it is. Definitely. That's what's needed in that whole thing. And I could say, yeah, I think I definitely need work on that. I'm willing to work on that. Practicing gentleness.
Well, you're a gentle spirit, Dali. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you. And I apologize that we lost the whole first half where you told your story, but maybe you come back on sometime and tell your story.
I'd
And
love to.
in the meantime, we have this lovely episode where we've talked about all these different quotes from artists and from the book Art and Fear. And could you send me a link for your YouTube channel, especially the episodes that you did where you were reading Art and Fear?
Oh, yes, you
Yeah,
did tell me a while ago that I should do that. I will try and like get all of them together and I'll send it to you on an
it's
email.
pretty easy. I don't know if you know how to make a playlist on YouTube, but it's pretty easy.
Oh yeah, I can make a playlist and
Yeah,
then
yeah. When you
put
go to
that link.
your channel, and then it'll say playlist over on the side, and you click
Yeah.
on that and it'll say new playlist, and then you just tuck all of them, all the Art and Fear ones, into one playlist and send me the link, and
Okay.
I'll put it with the chat with the episode.
Okay,
So
cool.
great.
That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us
you
from
so
Cape
much.
Town, South Africa. I have learned a
The
lot
pleasure's
from
to
you
be here.
today, and the spirit of the Lord shines through you. It's really beautiful.
Yo, thank you. That is really that's an amazing thing to say. Um, thank you. Yo, God bless you. Sure. And your
God bless
family.
you.
Wow.
Yeah. Have a wonderful
Yeah.
day, Dolly. Well, night. I guess it's
Well,
nighttime for you, right?
yeah, you have a wonderful day. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
Keep well.